And you know that the weather is starting to be nice when they come out and you can see them.
Oh, yeah. Can't believe as I was driving through, what was it, Cornish yesterday, it was 52 degrees on there.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay, we're live, we're live. I will wait for you.
Call the team to order then. And we have four people. I see we're not expecting Eric.
Eric just wanted to,
Yeah, he just did that.
email, Johnny and Lee Hopkins. So this is our board.
I guess first up, citizen comments. Are there any candidates who have anything you want to share before we get started?
Yes, Dr. Johnny wants to. Anything here?
If we caught him in,
Sorry, my volume wasn't up loud enough. I couldn't hear you at first.
The citizen comments.
I wanted to ask about the generator testing in 10.28.4.13. There was no changes in that. Are we going to change that overall?
Yeah, it has been changed. That.
Okay, because I looked at the one that was posted online and I didn't see any red marks in that.
Okay, I didn't open up on your phone. Okay, okay. You don't look on. I believe as far as generating testing, like, we just remove, any exemption from those requirements and tighten up the hours. Standard hours. Yeah.
any other citizen comments?
What do you think?
What did we agree on last time around the plantings? Because there was discussion about that. And I know that the shoreline ordinance that was discussed.
I don't know that we did much of it. I remember making a note about conversation that we had or I had had with somebody prior to that meeting. Notes from under the meeting. I don't know that we really spent any time talking about how
I think there was something about 80% coverage by the 1 year mark. I think. 5 years. 5 years.
Kate, is it possible there's a mic not turned on because everybody's really muffled?
This might be not work,
Oh.
so.
Can you hear us okay at this point?
Oh, that's much better. Much
Okay.
better.
How's that here?
Can you hear like? Can you hear like?
Yes, I can now.
Okay. So I think it was, Blake was explaining what that meant, so like 80%, 5%.
Because what I saw, again, maybe I didn't have the most updated online, but it says 75% for 1 year for the vegetation plantings. In what I looked at with some corrections in it online.
I think I do remember what they just said, that we didn't parallel the Sean and John and, yeah, whatever that said previously. Yeah.
So we're gonna go through the figures today.
Okay.
yeah, So, why don't we start on here?
And just,
Yeah.
it can be at any point along the way, what I passed out are some suggestions that we thought would be helpful based on research that was done. Sorry, it
Yep.
took place kind of in the last few days. I didn't have time to get to it sooner in order to get it to you guys sooner. But if there's a way in which, I don't know if it's, again, kind of as we're going through the document that we have already for the drastic changes, and then these get swept in, because they all are numbered, so. Whatever would make,
Okay,
make you think.
why don't we go through and to keep,
Yeah.
things still order, why don't we go through the stuff that is written based on last meeting first? And then get into the
Okay.
next.
Thank you.
So. Chapter 9 is on top. In the first, there's, accessory retail. In chapter 9, added parking requirements for accessory retail. So we added accessory retail as a category. So added parking as 2 per 1,000 square feet. Accessory retail we defined as less than up to 1,000 square feet. So saying that accessory retail establishments use 2 dedicated parking spots. As kind of so to just looking at what we require for others, kind of just 2 out of the ether, so that seems fine, we can leave that. The other change, that was added, which was, on the back side of that page, is, has to do with LD 427, which made the change that in growth areas, dwelling unit, must have up to 1 parking space per dwelling unit, which cannot be under more in growth areas. So I added, growth areas for Walsboro. My understanding is that it's the village, the downtown, and the historic village are our growth areas. We could probably make an argument that before there's also a growth area. I did not add the root one district to it, but, in the downtown, to conform with this law, added that, any dwelling unit in those districts need 1 parking space per dwelling unit. So change to that. Okay, and then. I know. I'm working on 2 different computers and they're not talking to each other at this moment. So in chapter 2, I added, the town planner, because it had the town CEO, but didn't have the town planner, so. Look at that language, make sure that that language is okay, or if there's changes that you want me to make to that language.
I would, just make a suggestion to use the, like S parentheses, P, M parentheses. It was a little confusing to me, using the word they, are we talking about the board, the planning board, or are we talking about the town planner? So the singular, S/HE is another way to write it, but, anyway, I think it'd be less confusing. So
Why is this called military support?
I might have,
2.2 is the planning board.
no, but, I need to copy the first. There's a page that should be in front of that. Um, maybe in the- Article two, 2.2 is town planner assist the town manager, select board, planning board, and other town staff in the administration of various language regulations and programs. And then 2.2.1 is administrative support, the town planner to provide contact and administrative support for the planning board. She prepares public hearing notice of December notification of legal basis. She conducts the application, background material, notify applicants. She prepares draft findings, decision notices, and decision notices at the public. I added that section only because it mirrors what it has been CEO in the planning level. So happy to change it, adjust it, delete it.
I think it's fine up there.
And I just found confusing. The first time I read it, I thought you were going to explain it's responsible. People who said that.
I can put this day with the company.
Yeah, sure, that would be fine. And then just, you have to add SSP words. Because you're referencing it.
That would be anything. Just the outcome. Not a good.
Yeah. With the code enforcement officer, it's considered town planner. Dealing with.
Missing page.
Or maybe it's 55.
We could find that next thing, how to get some off with doing that.
So most of these, are just getting the numbers squared away.
Yeah, the rest of it is more, you know. Next, what we start. So,
I think this might be what Mark's talking about, 2.3.2.7. The board shall adopt rules for transaction of business in the code enforcement company, a record of its resolutions, transactions, and correspondence.
Part of it, there's 3 of them right in a row, that basically refer to the code enforcement officer. What was the number again?
New 2.3.2.7,
Rules and records.
yes.
So, yeah, I think it's not a code enforcement officer, it's a town planner who keeps the record.
Article 6. Unnecessary, because it's not until page 7. That we have with the assembly structure. To change anything from that person. In right, it's 50 as well.
There's a,
Oh, yeah.
6.6.7. Well, we just changed the arrow here.
In the rural district, added format pocket, added accessory retail to the list of, allowing agriculture, forestry, aquaculture, home occupation, accessory retail. The 6.6% rural district, we added accessory retail to that paragraph, extension. No fun. And then in the table. I need to, the formatting of the table is a little wonky, because it's the table on it, I was writing this at 9 o'clock on the Tuesday night, and I was finding it cleared away, so, I realize the formatting it needs to be adjusted, but, we added to, page
There was 1 and 6-7, 1 and 6-8.
yeah, 7. The accessory structure, we added that our first meeting, I haven't changed that. And then, the next page, 8, we added, accessory structure to commercial uses. And then we also added on, page 11, divided retail into large retail sales and accessory, comma, small retail sales. For accessory small retail sales, said that everything, it is still disallowed in residential areas and in industrial areas. I did put that it was, so accessory small is allowed in rural areas. And it has to come before the planning board. All accessory retail sales have to come before the planning board unless they are downtown. And that sort of follows what we had for retail. So the ultimate changes that were made was in accessory retail sales, we added that they are allowed in the rural area.
What is CP?
Code enforcement and program.
Oh, both of you.
So it has to go through, but it's not just CEO,
Gotcha.
it's, it
The
has
combo.
to, it's Mark and I will have to review it together.
Got it.
Question, statement, addition, subtraction. Okay, and then I added, on page 12, added accessory structure greater than 100 feet for industrial uses. Again, I only have to go through this, but we have talked about adding the accessory structure in both commercial and industrial, so I added it.
That's the question, actually, maybe not, I don't know what page you're on.
Well,
Large retail and rural village. Don't exactly know what a rural village is.
So we'll go with that.
Rural village is Windward Mills and.
Yeah.
Yeah,
It's
that'd be
two,
great.
it's two small bits that are over, on Windward Mills, they're the,
The old village over there.
park, yeah, no, it's the old village, there's 2 like housing clusters. Of dense, sort of villagey area, and that's over by the industrial.
Kind of centered around the old range.
Yes.
Yeah,
Okay.
that's
And-
one of them, and then there's another one. near that.
And then Burns Corner, which is on 220 north, where that 4-way intersection is, it's, they just put up the 4-way stop sign.
Oh, with the 64 flashing LED.
Yes, yeah, yeah,
Yeah, it's funny looking at the map, because everything's all uniform, it's just one little dot, up at the very tippy top. And that's that.
Coincidentally also surrounded around an old Brains building.
Yeah, probably, I mean, that's actually probably a historical phenomenon, right?
Yeah.
Just kind of cool.
Yeah, at one point the village.
And that's what I wanted, so.
Yeah, it's,
Oh, rural village business district, gray, you have one here. One here, and one here. Don't be mad, that's the Route 1 commercial.
so where's the
That's,
proposed cell tower? With that, I mean, that's gotta be fairly close to that here, right?
He's going on this lot right here, I believe.
Wow.
We got Sally's place right there. The only one that's big enough to allow something like that to fall over.
Interesting.
Yeah, it's right before that, okay. Yeah.
That's it.
Okay. Yeah, concerning, where we do the line at large versus small retail, 1,000 square feet is that. It isn't really that big. I don't think that's the direction. Citing a large retail in the rural village on. Someone wants to go with 1,500 square foot convenience store, and one of those areas. Coming to the planning board. Thanks.
And then on page 14, there's the footnote 7, this mixed use building that we use in the highest standard of review. That was the building. Nothing after that is a change for moving, I think, that's it for. Okay. Article 9 is already done to, Article 10. Atomic standards. Okay. I only think there's the ones that apply. And then just get to the split, so. And then the formatting of those inconsistent. The formatting where I've been.
We're happy.
Private internet, we removed the final line there, things like. Well, coverage impact. We use that happened in our first meeting. Then on the next page, we are now in wireless telecommunication. Section 10.28.3 is wireless telecommunication.
Ellen said that she's sorry for the interruption, she's not picking up the mic that's 10 feet from the front of the line. That one also.
Right here?
Yeah.
That one probably needs to be pointed at me, because.
Okay.
Is that better, Sally? I'm now facing away from it, is that better? Can you hear me? Okay.
Thank you.
At 10.28.3.8.4 was removed, which was I mean, then 10.28 6.3.10 was surety. We changed this to be closer to what Rockland had. That the surety is tied to inflation for the length of the lease. In the event of the transfer of ownership, the seller will be responsible for notifying the buyer and the town of the transfer. That agrees with that of the first meeting and being such. 10.28.4.5. I changed the language because I had missed we had changed it from 150 of its height. So it's 150% of its height to a public or private road and 200% from the property line is now the setback we're proposing. Landscaping, we changed it, all plantings must be of native species and maintained with 80% survival for 5 years, which is what the shoreline zone says. We added 10.28.4.9, which is signage. Again, to mimic more of Rockland ordinance. No commercial messages or any other signs beyond safety warnings and an identification sign of no more than 6 square feet shall be posted on any tower.
We don't have to on this, but instead of identification sign, we could maybe think of the wayfinding. Is, because you know, you don't want to name it the, you know, the Brandon Tower. You know what I'm saying? It's like, because what, that, isn't that what you're getting at? But,
I think we were talking about like the name of the company, like it's a Blue Sky Tower,
okay, gotcha.
as opposed to like the tower is this way. It's like a, this is
Okay,
Blue Sky Industries.
stand corrected.
Yeah, they have a,
Okay, I'm good. I'm good.
We added, 10.28.4.12, utility service must be run underground from the tower to a pole on the roadway. We can change that from the first meeting.
the pole on the roadway, that phrase is.
Okay.
We have a. What are we calling it? We have done it. Is that? Town, state, road.
And private.
And yeah, and our private road.
But the location of the pole, you want close to the town or state road, not the side of it.
Exactly, that's exactly how I was thinking of it.
So any pole that's placed in the town of Waldeboro has to be approved by the director of public works. We just went through that with one for the extension on private road. So, before CMP will authorize the private company to set a pole, it has to be approved by the director of public works.
How about a pole? We don't have it.
Public road? Or do you want to put it on town or state road?
I mean, it seems kind of silly, you're, private roadway, so then, 20 homes with a road association that we're gonna make. Like that, like, that's a really, figure it out to the next state highway. I think if it's a public road and not a private road.
Although in a subdivision, the roadway is technically, they can have a private roadway in a subdivision that is not owned by the town, and in fact, they have to guarantee to get their subdivision that the town will never own that road. So it's still a private road owned by a road association, even though it has a high traffic,
Yeah.
roadway.
Well, I think what you don't want are driveways and access roads. You want to go underground.
The concern I thought was that we were worried about trees talking. If they wanted to put in a private road to the tower that's 50 feet wide and it's maintained. And they wanna put poles, it's gonna be more costly, but is it any different than?
I think I think some of what we were looking at was just like the visual impact and minimizing that, I mean, specifically for the cell towers, that, you know, they have to, at least in most cases, that I can think of, either build or improve an existing road significantly to support the building of the cell tower, in case they're already, you know, they already have the equipment to trench the power. But I think that was sort of the upshot, was, it was a. Definitely thing there.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. I'm not opposed to saying town or certainly. I think those happen in the future, and to argue about connecting some power line on a private road.
They could apply for,
Arguments when-
they could apply for a waiver,
Yes,
to say here's a private road and you can have that discussion.
right. Yeah, I think that's a good idea.
Okay.
Because that's not a very common thing, and, I mean, what Brenda was describing. That, you know, I mean, maybe in the future, but.
Okay, so the one right after that, noise, which is now 10.28.4.3, was 10.28.4.11 before. Operation of a backup power generator at any time during the power failure and testing of backup generator must meet the noise standard for the zoning district outlined in Article 7. General Performance Standards subsection 7.6. So we took away, that they're exempt from noise standards, and the, between 7 AM and 10 PM. We did put in then a new one, 10.28.4.14 generator. Testing of the backup generator must occur only between the hours of 10 AM and 3 PM, 1500 hours during the weekday, and be tested a maximum of once per week. Top of the next page, 10.28.5 starts on the previous page, conditions, standard conditions of approval. Shall include the agreements below, and any others required by Article 10.28 and the planning board. So basically it says any conditions of approval that you don't, that are outlined in this article and that the planning board adds on, plus 10.28.5.1 electronic emissions as a standard condition of approval prior to commencing regular operation of the tower. All tower owners and operators must submit a certificate of compliance with all current Federal Communication Commission regulations concerning electromagnetic regulation, radiation, and other electronic emissions applicable to the tower and all co-located equipment. All tower operators and owners shall bring towers into compliance with any new federal, state, and local laws and regulations concerning the electromagnetic radiation and other electronic emissions applicable to the tower and all co-located equipment in accordance with such regulations, and submit a new certificate of compliance to the town. Basically, the only thing we added from last time was the tower and co-located equipment.
This certificate of compliance, this is something that the SEC issues now. I assume.
I believe so.
Okay.
They have to show that they meet the FCC regulations that are laid out in the Telecommunications Act of 96.
Okay.
So it's that compliance is what we're looking for. And if they update that Telecommunications Act, then any compliance.
I wonder how in practice this is, going to work. Because I'd be really surprised if FCC issues a certificate of compliance prior to the construction of the tower. Prior to contract being written to the other countries that already get put in. So like, we should absolutely do that. But I think that, we're expecting to receive that as part of the approval. But as a condition of approval, the demand that we receive that after the fact, that is.
Yeah, and it says, as a standard condition of approval, prior to commencing regular operation of the tower, so. That's. We don't specifically say after the tower is built prior to commencing, we could add that to clarify. That we expect the tower would be built, but it's before they start operations, they have to come back to the town and show. That they meet the,
Before the road switch.
Yep.
Right, okay. Yep, alright. Something.
okay, that is the end of.
Maybe it's
Something.
yeah, 10%.
There's 10.28, but, the other changes do not apply to the wireless telecommunications tower. Do you want to talk about this, or do you want to just go on?
No, let's
and
go
get
through
back?
this.
So 10.32.2. This is rear lot access and frontage. Clarifying what is a rear lot. So 10.32.2, we added, a lot has a right of way or deeded access. So the lot itself does not have its own access to rear lot. 10.32.6, the rear lot does not have any existing road frontage of its own other than what is deeded as a right of way from the front lot to a private or public roadway. And then we added 10.33, which is flag lot. Existing lots that meet the definition of flag lot, being a rear lot with road frontage that does not meet the minimum road frontage requirements for the zoning district. And meets the ordinance requirements in every other way, and shall have at least 50 feet of road frontage. Has land running from the road to the lot which conforms with the dimensional requirements of a major private street. As outlined in the street access driveway, street road construction standards outlined in this ordinance. Are pre-existing lots that were created prior to the adoption of this ordinance in 2005. And which would otherwise be non-conforming and non-buildable because of insufficient road frontage as required by this ordinance. No new flag lots will be created. That portion of the rear lot which abuts the rear lot line of the front lot shall extend to minimum length equal to the minimum road frontage required for the land use district in which it was located, and extend back a distance equal to the required front setback. And then the front lot line for the purpose of conforming to the front structure setback requirements for the rear lot will be measured from the rear lot line of the existing road frontage lot. Changes, additions, adoption.
Was there anything in there about, right away, not done? Just to clarify that,
There would be not. You brought
like, want to be added, just so you know. or take the
to the back lot or the front lot.
back one.
The rear lot does
The back lot,
mention right of way or deeded access. And
Correct, but
And-
when they're talking about that distance, meaning,
Yeah, the necessary right of way to access the rear lot does not reduce the road frontage of the existing road lot below the minimum of the traffic.
and in the rear lot, it does say the portion of the new rear lot which abuts the rear lot line at the front shall extend a minimum length equal to the minimum road frontage. It has that same language as flag lot, it does not say in there and does not include like the right of way. Do we include the right of way in that minimum frontage or not? So we need to add that to 10.32.
back lot with the right of way, that, the distance on that right of way does not count towards that distance that you're measuring
Why wouldn't it?
It doesn't,
It never is included.
it doesn't apply to us as a ground.
Correct.
Right, it would in the side lot, in the back lot it does not.
Right away, not. Theoretically, you could totally land on a piece other than the right away granting access to it.
Right, but the portion of the right of way, so the back lot. And we're measuring road frontage against the back line of the front lot. Right, and then we have to subtract the
Right away.
the right of way. Except that section on the front lot. Does the front lot also have to subtract it from its road frontage?
So if you had 200 feet total, including the right of way, full width of that lot, then abuts the homeowner in front. If it's 200 feet and you have 30-foot right of way, you have to deduct the 30-foot right of way from that 200 feet, and now it's 170.
Right, but is it 170 for the front lot as well? Of road
Front
frontage?
lot doesn't count. It's just the lot in the back. The
But
back
if we're allowing the front lot to count it, shouldn't we allow the back lot
They
to
own,
count it?
they own that right of way. They own that property.
They do own that property, but the back lot owns, if the back lot is the same dimensional standards as the front lot, and we're allowing the front lot to count the portion of that right of way as part of their road frontage, they own it. The back lot owns,
They own all 200 feet of that
they own
border.
all 200 feet of that border. And so why would we subtract that right of way from their road frontage if we're also not subtracting it from the front?
Because we have language in there that also already dictates that you do not count. Right. I got it. Either we change the whole thing and get rid of all the language required on the right of way. Or we have to include that in that language.
But if we're not counting right of way, then it shouldn't count for the front lot either. If that's what the language. Right,
We're saying that the front lot here has to. This lot has to be compliant, everything except for.
Yeah, so yeah, it sounds like if we have two lots that are 200 feet wide, one has road frontage, one doesn't, the front one is conforming even though 30 feet is 200 feet of right of way. But the back lot is somehow not conforming because it's given up 30 feet and you still have a 200-foot border with the front lot.
The right of way goes over the front property to the back, but at some point, the right of way stops at the property.
Yeah.
line, And they still own, they still own where the right of way
They still-
comes in,
Yeah, they still own 200 feet of border.
yeah.
Right, but the purpose of this, you don't count. it.
Except for the front lot.
No, you don't count it.
You do count it on the front lot, you don't count it on the back lot.
Which is Martin said that. but
No, the right of way does not count on the back lot. The right of way would count because they own that property in the front lot.
Even though they're both 200 feet wide, one is conforming and one is
You
not.
know, the fact that they're probably in roadways, right?
Um.
Well, it's here.
You know, the back lot, section of land we have. With the, do you remember where that is?
Necessary, yeah.
rear lot access and frontage.
yeah, necessary right of way to access the rear lot does not reduce the road frontage of the existing road lot below the minimum established for the district where it is located. So it's just saying it doesn't diminish the front person's road frontage, but it doesn't really explain what happens to the back.
It could be problematic because if somebody set the lot sizes with these frontages in mind, they would probably set it, they could even set it to the exact minimum. Which would make the back lot, so if they set it to 200, front lot would be fine, but the back lot is permanently locked out of having enough road frontage. It would set to the line.
Yeah. Well, the likelihood of this happening is that things are line.
I mean, I think it's likely because people would would go, what's the minimum I need? 200? All right, it's 200. Yeah.
In a couple of-
Yeah.
So I still love you. I need to understand what the rule, I wasn't even asking about the backlog, I was putting on the backlog.
Yeah, yeah.
Just talking about the front log at the time.
Okay.
So, yeah. I don't know that I know enough to talk about this anymore.
Can you say that, maybe I'm not sure I'm understanding either, but for the backlot, can't you count, just say that you can count the roadway, right of way as part of the 200? Does that fix it or not?
Yeah, that's what we're sort of going back and forth on. So, 10.32.3, the necessary right of way to access the rear lot does not reduce the road frontage of the existing road lot below the minimum established for the district.
Could be passed out onto that lot, and
Well, that's talking about the front lawn.
I know that, but I'm saying if you carry that same rule up to the back lot, then it's on the front.
No, actually,
Or maybe you don't.
so, this actually says, so, because 10.32, this is 10.32.3. So if you have to read it with 10.32, which is new rear lot proposed to be placed behind legally conforming lot that has existing road frontage shall be deemed to comply with the minimum road frontage requirements if they meet all of the following. The necessary right of way to access the rear lot does not reduce the road frontage of the existing lot below the minimum established for the district in the city. of Fairfield.
Right, so there's 200-foot hypothetical line, take a 50-foot right of way, the front lot goes on now 150 feet.
Yeah,
it's
it
not-
would reduce the front lot road frontage. So basically, the front lot needs 250 for this to exist.
For it to be able to run.
Right, yeah, right. And.
Or for it to happen, if there's already a building on the lot and you wanna put a lot behind, they would have to, if they only have 200 feet, they can't then provide that right. With a lot behind.
So then going back to Brendan's question, how, part A, how many lots actually exist that are that small with road frontage where this would be a problem, and B, is it really that onerous if somebody's creating a lot, to ask for the 250 also? Because if you're creating a lot anyway, you know, you're just saying that's the new minimum. I mean, that's not a very giant lot. Are we creating a hardship on anybody, or, you know, is it really, I mean, if we just say in that case, that you need 250 road frontage, is that hurting anybody? Because it would certainly simplify things.
And that's basically what this does.
Right, so that's what I'm asking, maybe we really need to change it. Is somebody suffering a hardship? I don't know if you can think of an example. Really, 250 feet isn't, well, yeah, less than a big idea, that's.
Well, this tax has
300
installed what we're
well,
talking about.
300 feet is a football field.
Yes, the only thing that we need to clarify in my mind is making sure you define what we're gonna do right.
Right,
That's
and
the thing. How you guys do that, fine, but
I
it
think,
just needs to be clear.
And if we have one of these hypothetical 200-foot wide lots and we can't, they can't develop the rear lot based on how it's written, what is the recourse for the land? It's the board of the waiver and the about forbidding the variance. I sort of think that like we've made the situation dramatically better. Maybe we wait till it fail for a couple of years and learn some things about it. Because I mean, there's a mechanism in place for people to get relief from it and back to here's on it. Well, we're really only talking about. The wall, correct?
I mean, that's the majority of the town.
Yeah, yeah.
So, Mark, what you're asking is in 10.32.4, the portion of the new rear lot which abuts the rear lot line of the front lot shall extend a minimum length equal to the minimum road frontage required for the land use district in which it is located and extend back a distance equal to the required road front setback. In there, we need to clarify that the right of way does not count for road frontage. That's it.
It's totally up to you. We can declare whether we're gonna count that right away, distance, or we're not gonna count.
I think if we're not counting it for the front lot, we shouldn't count it. But everybody feels like not the same reason.
Whatever you guys want to do.
Yeah.
The other question I've got, the way that's written, when you're talking about the setback from the front lot line, are you referring to the 75-foot setback? Because that shouldn't be in there. Because that,
Don't pop my eye to you.
I mean, this is how it is right now. I haven't changed it.
Yeah.
okay,
This is how it is that we are essentially saying that back lot line for the back lot. We are treating that as if it is road frontage, and so they have a 75-foot setback from that back lot line.
but the only thing that changes in the back lot is what the frontage distance is on that. Okay, all other setbacks apply. 75 from the front line, 30 feet from the side and rear. So all those would apply.
So all we need to do is add in there that the right of way or deeded access does not count towards road frontage calculation.
That's, yeah. It's stating it one way or the other, it's up to you.
Can I get an explanation on extend back at this?
That's the one I've talked.
I know, yeah. So
That's 75.
I'm trying to diagram the sentence in my head. So we're saying, we're talking, the subject is the portion of the new rear lot. You're saying that it shall extend a minimum length equal to road frontage. And it shall extend back a distance equal to the front setback. So you're saying that like if we have a 75-foot front setback, the rear lot has to be at least 75 feet deep?
No, because this is one
I think
thing
that's what it
that I
says.
think it needs to be removed because it is incredibly confusing. And if you're talking about any other setbacks, if you go to 10.32.1, it basically deals with all that where it says the lot conforms to the dimensional requirements. This is under, if you go to the previous one, it has to comply with the minimum road frontage requirements if they meet all of the following. The lot conforms to all the dimensional requirements for the district in which it is located except for road frontage. So all the rest of the requirements for setback apply except the road frontage. So this is all we're talking about when we're referring to that.
Right, so why don't we just delete
Exactly.
and extend back a distance equal to the required front setback?
Because it has nothing to do with anything.
You already covered it. That's fine.
Exactly.
And you just make it confusing to have that there.
And then do we want to add in, that the right of way, portion of the right of way does not count towards, calculating road frontage of that lot.
I think it should. It's no different than owning the driveway. Like, we count driveways and road frontage calculation. And they do own it, because the right of way just crosses over the front property and it ends at their property line, they still own 200 feet.
The only time that wouldn't is if we have one proposal in the works now, where the right of way extends the entire length of the left-hand property. In that case, they don't own that, it is the right of way.
But do they own the land under the right of way?
No,
Can I ask a question about what the point of all this is? Like, what's the point of requiring frontage onto another lot? Like, what what is this preventing from happening? Because there's so many lots in town, that we have all these long skinny lots that absolutely are gonna wind up getting developed exactly the way you're describing them. Right away going down one property line and all the other back lots are gonna be off to one side. And if, you know, you have multiple lots going back there, like, it turns into a whole confusing thing, especially if the person in the front lot, you know, has a lot line that is jagged, that connects to these back lots. So what is the problem that we're trying to solve with 10.3?
We need to know what the calculation is to make sure, because that was part of the whole thing, is it's telling us that in order to be deemed a back lot, you have to meet this criteria. So the criteria needs to be listed out, and the only thing that the back lot is dealing with is what are you considering the front distance on that lot?
But why does it matter? I mean, isn't the point of the frontage to prevent too many driveways from being able to put people together? Isn't this all about roadway safety?
I have no idea why. That's
That's the,
That would be
I have no
nice.
idea.
I mean, I mean, to me, that's
Well,
exactly why.
The only other thing they're potentially controlling is the density of building.
But that's regulated by minimum lot size,
Right, right,
which is all still in place.
and, you
But you
know,
could have 100-foot wide lot that goes 4,350 feet, 47. I think it has to also be how wide the lot has to be, and we need to determine if is a lot that's 200 feet wide buildable, or do you have to have 250 feet?
But that's all based on setbacks. That doesn't have anything to do with this fantastical road frontage calculation.
Well, it is, because you could meet the setbacks on a 100-foot wide lot with a single wide mobile home. If you turned it sideways, you meet all the setbacks, you're good to go. But it's saying
If you're creating spaghetti lots.
you're creating spaghetti lots.
If you're wider lot, it becomes the roadway.
Yeah,
No, you wouldn't have a lot of this. That's my whole point. Like
Well, I
the
think this is,
interaction with the roadway is determined by the front lot. It has nothing to do with the shape of the back lot.
but I also think, I think this particular is making sure that they're not putting in tiny little narrow lot behind a larger front lot. Right, but if you have a right of way that goes down and then you put in two little skinny lots to access off of that, you're creating these tiny little skinny lots.
You can create little skinny lots with the language that's in here right now. So if you've got a long lot, you put in a roadway down the side, and then you chop this up with a bunch of long skinny lots, you're measuring this against the front lot. You're not measuring this.
Yeah,
But if there's more than 3 lots off of that, that becomes a private road and they have to have 200 feet of road frontage off of that road.
Okay.
So
Correct.
if it's
Fair
a,
enough.
if it's a driveway, they can only create 2 back lots.
Right.
So you
But
could
when you
create,
do the third, it becomes
it becomes a private
a
road.
private road, so it's no longer a driveway when you put the third residence, the third dwelling.
Okay.
So anytime you have a third dwelling or more, it is a private road, it has to be named and it has to be, you know.
And if they were proposing a private road, they would need to make sure that all those lots were conforming with 200 feet of road frontage. before they go.
and if you're 250 feet wide, our minimum lot size is 80,000 square feet. You'd have to also be more than 200 feet wide the other direction.
It's outside. It's gonna have to be about 20 foot.
So the minimum lot size is 80,000 square feet, which is 1.87 acres. If you're only 250 feet wide, you'd have to be more than 250 feet wide the other way.
well, what if you're 1,000 feet wide? Because there's 1,000 feet of road frontage that you're
everything else-
abutting.
Everything else is going to apply when
Well,
they
then
try
the
and
road
build,
frontage standard.
because.
But that's what we're saying, they could still make a spaghetti
you
lot
have to put a tiny
because they're
house
long
in there.
sided,
But
the
then they
road
can't build
frontage side. I mean, like you were saying, they can make 100-foot wide one that a camper runs.
You have
Trailer.
75 foot back and 30 foot setback from the side and the rear. By the time you figure all those out, you're gonna narrow it out to the point where there's no longer a buildable lot.
I mean, 75 and camper is what, 20 feet wide? That's all,
Right,
then
well, you
then it only
expect it
needs to
to
be
rise,
hundred and 40 feet wide, so we're still talking about, there's still availability to build a spaghetti lot under these. Under this term.
Is there any rule about how close to any of your property lines you build your house?
30
Yeah.
feet.
30 feet, so, yeah. that-
75 from wherever you.
From the front, right.
In the world.
Yeah,
So-
yeah, you were.
There are a lot like that.
Yeah, yeah, that are on top of each other.
You can, yeah, you can go like this.
Yeah, interesting.
I do think there's something to be said about whether or not someone intends to build something a certain way and whether or not they will. If someone makes a spaghetti lot that is barely buildable, will they do that knowing that they won't be able to sell it? Or if they do and they can't sell it, then, okay, like, why is that a town problem necessarily?
We get feeds, you know, and Daryl will point them out to you where a lawyer has drafted up a lot and all of a sudden the lot is non-conforming.
Mhm.
So we basically have to get in touch with a lawyer, they have to redraft everything in order to make it a conforming. So it happens, I mean, people will split lots and then they don't understand the consequences of how they do that. But that's not up to the board, unless it comes to subdivision, then you guys can get into that.
Yeah.
It's usually when somebody comes in for a building permit, I've got, you know, certain criteria I have to go through and make sure they meet in the back lot with one of the confusing ones.
So that brings us back to the question.
Yeah.
Do we count the right of way in terms of the road frontage for the back lot or not? We put in that clarifying language. of frontage.
I like the suggestion where we kept whatever the beginning language was and deleted all the rest of it.
That,
I'm not sure how that answers your question, but that's lost. Yeah.
the language we were deleting was the repetition of that it has to have a 75-foot setback.
Okay, okay.
So it doesn't clarify the right of way and what happens to the right of way and whether or not that counts towards the road frontage or not for the back lot. We know that it does not for the front lot, but does it for the back?
I think it, I guess my first thought is it should be consistent. If it does count for the front lot, it should count for the back lot. If it doesn't, it should be no for both. That may be a misguided opinion, but it sometimes it's continuity is a good decision. It seems less arbitrary, you know?
I agree.
Yep.
One more chance at the March 12th board meeting, so be it.
But then
Well,
you've got a point.
Really?
More dollars.
There's not that. It's not that good.
very small.
Don't get sick.
But maybe, is there something that we want that for?
But then we have to go. Still
Well,
takes,
yeah,
still
you don't
takes.
have to, I mean, you could split a decision and then it would just be a no.
Oh, yeah, I'm not saying you have to vote that I vote. I'm saying that it still takes 3 votes.
Yeah.
No one
If there's 3 people here,
Yeah.
it's not 2-1 vote.
An automatic, yeah.
Okay.
I think let's move on.
Yeah,
Yeah, I'm with you.
So the last final, piece of chapter 10, we added in 10.37. I didn't really know which article to stick this in, so I put it in 10 because 10 is sort of specific standards, but, put in accessory retail. There's also a definition for accessory retail in Article 15, but, wanted to put in accessory retail in one of the chapters, the specific standards seem like the right chapter. So to start with the definition, 10.37.1. Accessory retail is any retail business where the size of the building is less than 1,000 square feet and is permitted in the rural zone where large retail is not an allowed use. And then parking accessory retail business must comply with the requirements and exemptions in Article 9 roads and parking traffic and traffic access. Conforming with all the requirements of the home occupation business parking space requirement. Basically says what we looked at in chapter 9 and what the definition is in chapter 15 for Article 15, but wanted to give us a safe increase in the future. We wanted to make some recommendations. So this is all kind of repetitive information, but
Is accessory retail? I mean, I guess we were conceiving that it would be most typically in the rural zone. But is it, I mean, could it exist in other zones? And the reason I ask is why, I mean, I guess maybe as a clarification, it's okay, but I'm just wondering if you need the where large retail is not an allowed use.
no,
you know.
I see why that was put in to say, look, large retail is not allowed here, but this is.
Right,
But yeah, I mean.
But
but for the sake of a
Yeah,
planning
yeah.
document, I don't know if it.
no, I think you're right. That it doesn't do that.
I will say that, recording, some of the institutional knowledge about why decisions were made is super useful. We have so many conversations, like, why is this like this? And we don't remember why, and if we can do that with one sentence and say, like, we don't want large retail.
Right, okay,
Like, I think that it's really.
not a bad thing to
Yeah,
have it.
yeah.
Push it to
Future
the-
conversation.
Is it making it confusing so the person is like, well, what about other zones or?
Yeah, I mean, it's in the matrix, so we
Okay,
could
okay.
also remove that sentence and we could have a non-legally binding planning document that is in accompanying details where we could record. I mean, I have already started a document for my own sanity that says in 2025, we made these changes to the land use ordinance, right? And as I come up with things and have to research them, I add them to that document. So I have a resource to say, when was this changed? Because, for example, when did we split out campgrounds into large and small campgrounds? When did we split out retail into large and
Well,
small?
and why? Right,
And then, so I could add why into that going forward to say, here's why we did a couple of bullet points as to why, as an accompanying document to this, so it doesn't live in the land use ordinance, but there is a document that is there that sort of encapsulates some of these things, if that seems like a useful.
well, I think that sounds like a useful activity because whoever inherits somewhere down the road.
Well, the timeline for sure, but
Well, right, but, and I just raised the point that I don't really have a giant force in that way.
Yeah.
It was a first impression, but I get why you would need it as is. So I'm in the go with the flow mode.
I think for a legal document, we probably should take it out. Just, 'cause it's lost.
So, yeah, well, sometimes you invite future confusion about things and, the road to hell is paved with good intentions, right? And so I was just, just wondering what questions that might bring up for somebody in 5 years and then that knows what. How that takes you, I don't know. Because either way, it is all in the matrix, so.
Are there any other considerations that we want to have for accessory retail?
He said we're adding up.
Clear that into the parking matrix.
Or that is the parking district and to have Article 6 matrix. And the retail that was in it was, this large retail. And it was added to chapter 15 of the definition.
I don't know.
I love that we come up with accessory retail, that's really good. Sorry, legacy.
Okay, and then, finally, for Article 15 definition, we added accessory from a small retail. Business activity that was secondary to typically for the same lot and where the retail building is not like 1,000 square feet. Accessory structure, because we added that as a, as a category in the matrix, so any structure greater than 100 square feet that is not a dwelling unit, such as a garage, or deck. Um. And that is, that's not.
And then, I'm not sure where you are.
Article 15 in A.
15G.
Yeah, just, I don't think I have that too.
Did I not?
Is it this?
I have it.
That's part of it, yeah, it doesn't have any, numbers on it, so the pages that are just.
Okay. So I just see the right group now.
There should be in the A, I should have done the pages. Did it not? Huh. Okay.
What's wrong with the,
The. It is, there's nothing technically wrong with it, but such as the garage shed or deck. When you read it aloud, feels like that is trying to define a dwelling unit rather than an accessory structure.
Rotate it back.
So
Yeah,
a
where-
structure greater than 100 square feet, such as a garage, shed, or deck, that is not an accessory, that is not a dwelling unit. This is clearly.
yeah. Delete everything after you.
Yeah, let you, yeah, go ahead and wordsmith.
Um. And then, down in the L. No, sorry, F, we added flag lot. As a definition. Any lot with a narrow strip of land that has less than the required road frontage to the zoning district with a narrow strip connects the road to a parcel of land on the other lot. So the narrow strip of land is not a deeded right of way, but part of the.
I don't have that.
Yeah, I don't have that either, but.
I think that sounds good to me.
It does, yeah.
That was my kind of.
No, I think you described it exactly right. It's pretty, very straightforward.
And that definition came right from Hawthorne, so, and then we
I think
added
it's gotta be good.
large retail, a retail business with a space that is greater than 1,000 square feet.
That's good.
That was the article.
Good work.
So,
Before we move back to self-powered, discussion, because there are fewer to be had there. Is it okay if I bring something else real quick?
Yeah.
And I don't know if this is a bone that the rest of the planning board is interested in picking. I did have someone come to me concerned with the potential for AI data centers to move to Waldeboro. And the environmental human impact of those. And I doubt it's within the remit of planning board to prohibit such facilities. But I was looking through industrial restrictions that we might want to consider specifying data centers. Data center being defined as a physical facility housing significant IT equipment like servers, storage, and networking. In Article 11.6.6, there are a list of industries that are prohibited within a certain distance of major watersheds, great ponds, and shoreline zones, like tanneries. There's a couple others in that list, ones that are considered particularly noxious to water bodies. I would propose potentially adding data centers to that list. Most data centers put off up to 5 million gallons of water per day. I got to imagine that would have a major impact on our water systems. I would love to just say we don't want them anywhere near our major water bodies.
Concur.
The other environmental problem with those is, it's very difficult to get enough electricity to them.
Right.
To satisfy them, and so they do a lot of on-site electrical generation, creates a ton of air pollution. If you look at the ones that, for example, built in the city of Memphis, we've got all these gas turbine generators running, it's really foul in the air that they're operating despite being powered. This is the only part of our economy that's growing right now, is building data centers. Without it, our economy would be in recession. Trying to build one in Wisconsin right now, I think we should take this seriously and try to get something.
No, I like your suggestion a lot, and I 100% agree. It makes me think of something else. Too, which is, Is there anything in our land use ordinance about, I'm assuming, I don't want to leave it out, but about just adding large detention centers? You know, I mean, I'm not really sure that's something that I don't have, you have a very well thought out, elegant argument for why not the data center in an area that's got so much, you know, watershed, et cetera. I don't have the equivalent elegant argument for detention centers, but, you know, it just strikes me that if you're on the front end of that and you're planning, then maybe you don't have to go down the road that, like Merrimack, New Hampshire, had to go through, et cetera, et cetera. Not that Waldeboro would necessarily come up first, but
I could have sworn there was something within our ordinance referencing detention centers, I could be wrong, I could have sworn I saw it somewhere.
Yeah.
It's in the matrix, but you're referring to, when you're talking detention, you're talking about, you know, penal type stuff, or? what are you talking?
Well, the thing that's, I mean, in all honesty, the thing that's making me think of this is the, you know, the detention of, people. I'm trying not to be political in my
Yeah.
commentary, but a place to warehouse people before you deport them or blah, 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 blah. But I feel like when people play the semantics in the subject a lot, and it is basically, you are jailing somebody, basically, and you can call it a detention center, an internment center, a camp, you can call it a gulag, you can call it a jail. I mean, it is certainly in that category in my mind. And
They would specifically not be prisons, because prisons require a full court hearing to determine sentencing, so this falls outside of the remit of prisons, because that's a whole different.
right, but it is a place where you warehouse a lot
Yeah,
of people, and these facilities that they're trying to put in around the country are a lot larger than standard prisons. I mean, you know, and the resources, like the proposal in Louisiana was a little town, probably a little smaller than Waldeboro, and they wanted to put one of these things in it. Had like 30,000 people, and you know, we can't. I don't think our resources would bear the sudden influx of 30,000 people very easily. Now after my first step toward an elegant argument, but anyway, maybe not to fully resolve today, but maybe to, you know, to your point, I mean, the world is changing, and, you know, shoot first, ask questions later seems to be the process that a lot of people are using. So.
Reason why we gotta let them be the only ones that shoot first, and that's what it's
Right, well, yeah, especially, we're not doing it to make money, we're doing it to, you know, preserve the place that we live.
I'm on board with maybe adding something, but, and I honestly, I just don't know, to ask for clarification, if a higher federal authority, whether it be county, state, or federal, came in and wanted to build something, can we restrict them?
Governments generally don't build prisons anymore. This
Right.
is all corporate activity.
And mostly with the prison thing, that they're trying to utilize abandoned large buildings.
Warehouse.
Yeah, which, you know, they tore down the Sylvania Center, they thought would have been closest to that, but you never know what private company, when you got a private company with a cell tower on their mind, you never know.
Is it the one are they building one in New Hampshire, is that?
That one at the 11th hour, they pulled the plug on,
Oh, they did.
but they had to go through a fight, and there are a lot of court costs.
Was that a public or a private, was that a government or a private sector development, do you know?
Yeah, it was, but it was certainly, the government was certainly behind the scenes.
Guaranteed 80% fill on the prisons.
Right.
They won't build a prison unless it's guaranteed. that the government will build a prison to fill it up.
Right.
I don't know what you're saying about that. I don't really see anything, detention centers, jail, prison.
Yeah, I think the best category it fits under is, under the institutional section where it says public buildings for uses other than. the-
Yeah, that was the only place I could find that.
Right, yeah, that
So-
sounds like it would,
And again, I don't, I have no idea as far as the legalities. If it's a government entity, I think there's restrictions on what we can do. But if it's a
Right.
private entity, then
Well,
it's
well,
wide open.
yeah, I guess. Yeah, I'm not sure these people are paying much attention to documents like this one, and they try to go in.
But the thing is, if we have something pre-written, it makes that fight,
That's
So
what I'm thinking,
like-
because you're gonna wind up in court, and if you already have something that addresses it directly. And I'm not, I'm just gonna ask, you can say no, but you seem to be very good at research. And I'm just thinking maybe between now and a future meeting, there are certainly places around the country you've had to fight this, and there may be some, legal language or whatever out there that might, write a path for us.
I would be happy to look up potential ordinances that already exist in this world.
Yeah.
Um,
Anyway.
Yeah, yeah, I totally agree. I just wanted, just very quickly started back to the data center thing. I think just adding a data center to 11.6.6 prohibited from within a certain distance of waterways. And I didn't see anything, but potentially making sure the classified data centers as heavy industrial use to account for the infrastructural impacts.
Right.
Further limit where they could be built and how.
My suggestion too is that if, I don't think this is really a very good description in the, the matrix of the section 6. I would ask if you add something, and then it probably should be categorized as a planning board.
Yeah.
For whatever reason.
Right,
We'll need
yeah,
it.
it's great.
Yeah, I can pull, I think, I think I pulled this definition from a Colorado thing before, but the physical facilities have significant IT equipment and servers. So
What is 11.6?
I think
11.6.6.
Yeah, but not what's 11.6.
Oh, I don't remember.
I got a quick question, when the whole Walmart thing happened, and. Mark, I don't know if you remember this or no, when the whole Walmart thing came through, and Dan Scott had to go fight, said no, and then they started moving up the road. And I know the same thing happened here, and I know in Damascata, they got around it by limiting the overall square footage of any building, which was maybe a short-sighted way to, maybe there are some things that you want in your town that happen to be the big building, whatever. How did Waldeboro say no? Because I'm just wondering,
That was prior to the.
so if somebody has institutional memory, the reason I'm asking is that might be the way through on something, possibly either one of these things, because the size of a building that you need for both of those activities would be enormous, much bigger than anything.
No, no, this is like,
More than,
Or more.
more than 10 years ago. Yeah,
I thought that whole thing failed because they couldn't, we couldn't possibly provide water and sewerage.
I don't know what it was in this town. I know that in Damascata, they got around it by the square footage. Again, as somebody who was on the board at Lincoln at the time and was a, Chamber of Commerce kind of person, pointed out at the time it was a short-sighted thing, because there are potential industries that would require a 10,000 square foot building, and you might actually want to happen.
I think one of the things to keep in mind from this perspective is, one of the issues that we're running into is, if you have a large building over 10,000 square feet, you have to have a sprinkler system, which means you have to be on a public system that is going to handle.
With the high water pressure and.
Correct. It's
Right,
gotta be able to-
right.
If not, they've got to put in tanks and stuff like that to a certain thing, and it becomes cost prohibitive.
Right.
They-
We just had one fight,
outside.
it's happening right now.
Well,
So outside of, you know, if you went up the hill and in an area that there, you know, that's gonna stop them from even considering it anyway.
well, it may or it may not, because having just worked at a boarding school, had to deal with, I, someday, not during the meeting, and I'll take you through the craziness of water in Plymouth and Holderness, New Hampshire. Really insane stuff. But the water suppression, the fire suppression and getting up the hill to campus was a consideration and a big deal, but there are entities like, if our school needed to do that, they would have paid the $500,000 to make that happen. So there are entities out there that it's not money that I would ever personally be able to pay for something like that, but I'm not sure that would protect us out of feeling, you know, if you're gonna build a, you know, well, one of the projects I worked on was a $16 million facility. You know, we spent 2 million of that just with underground things to get to stormwater compliance and all those things that aren't very sexy, but are, you know, so.
Just the wastewater alone for the school, the high school that they just put in is $2.5 million.
Yeah.
Just that.
Yeah, no, that
So,
doesn't
I mean,
surprise me.
then when you start talking about well, storage tanks, pumps, fire, you know, suppression,
So
it is huge.
the campus sewer at Holderness School, some rocket scientists decided, well, the school's located on a Holderness line, with Plymouth right there, so our sewage goes to Plymouth. And somebody decided it would be a really good idea to build a sewer line underneath I-93. And it needs to be replaced, and that is gonna be an engineering marvel. Because I mean, that is a hell of a distance to bury a line. But anyway. And it's gonna cost a lot of money, but, you know, my only point is there are entities that exist that aren't, you know, aren't schools, which we're both talking about, that could conceivably not bat an eye at $500,000 in order to make the project happen. I don't think that's a forever protection.
We've been here for an hour and a half so far. Are there any other topics in the field? Like, suggestions about wireless stuff?
I do have three things that I just want to point out.
Yep.
If you go to section 2 of the land use manual, section 2.1.2.3, 2.1.2.2, and 2.1.9, all three of those refer to the actions under the description of the code enforcement officer. All three of those should be moved to under the planning, the town planner. Those are all actions that town planner is doing now, and they just happen to be under that.
2.1.2.3, 2.1.9.
1.2.2 and 2.1.9. I can read them off real quick if you want.
2.1.2.9.
2.1.9.
Okay, thank you.
So 2.1.2.2 is planning board applications. 0.3 talks about Board of Appeals applications, and then 2.1.9 talks about preparing the agenda for Board of Appeals and planning. Again, all three of those, if they get moved. And then the one that we were, for the life of me, I couldn't remember, it's section 5. 5.4.1.5 and 5.4.1.6. When it talks about notification to the town officials, again, it talks about code enforcement officer twice. They'll notify the Board of Appeals and the planning board of the request. Code enforcement officer shall advise the appeals, request in a local paper and all that other stuff. Again, those should be changed to town planner. And then 5.4.1.6, again, change code enforcement officer to the town planner. That's notification of the butter.
Go ahead.
Yeah.
The one thing that I wanted to make sure that we talked about, was the stormwater plan. I feel like this is something that we at least can talk about. We had a meeting prior to the last meeting. The applicant about the Winfield Mills subdivision and Starley endorsed his, the engineer that does most of their, they're a surveyor. They're a company that a lot of people rely on to do stormwater plans, all that engineering services related to doing subdivisions. And Dusty pointed out that no other municipalities around here are requiring stormwater plans until, well, some municipalities don't do it at all. And some of them are, like Warren, for example, designates a small subdivision, a large subdivision, requires stormwater on large subdivision, but does not require any stormwater plan for a subdivision of 4 lots. Yes. The way that the land use ordinance is now, although this happens really bad, the way that the land use ordinance is been enforced ever, is that a stormwater plan is required for any development. It's have a definition for that, which basically means any construction of any kind required. And I'm sure that you're not required, if you haven't been doing this, the predecessor hasn't been doing this either, even though that is the way the tax reads. And I think that there's, an opportunity here to make this a little more reasonable while still doing the environmental protections that we need to do as a responsible board. And the more that I think about this and talk to people about it, the more I keep coming up with reasons why. Like the giant ice on Jefferson Street. Stormwater had been done, this thing was mitigated, a situation where you had stormwater flows that come across the street, using the street. I learned this morning that the town is trying to get one of the landowners to move a town-owned drainage structure in the street that solve this problem. And so, like, I understand that requiring this additional service going to provide a dampening effect on real estate development in town. We also have real problems related to this issue. And I think that this is something that we should discuss changing. This is a fairly large topic. I guess. Does the board have any thoughts or comments on this?
I think it's, and I'm thinking of the example that's been before us recently. I think it's difficult to ask for something in land that is effectively undeveloped until they develop it. Like if it's been sitting the way it is, and for better or for worse. And I think it's a hard place that like, well, we just want to divide it into 4 pieces to ask for that until they get to the stage where they don't, because I don't know, because it's the creation of the impervious surface that's going to cause them to manage their water flows and all that. And until you know where you're going to do that, it's just difficult to do that. I also think in a subdivision, now that we have small and large, that in a subdivision where you're just dividing property, but it's not going to exist as an entity going in the future. I mean, our plan is to sell the pieces separately, and each of the 4 people is on their own deal with whatever. And if you remember from the maps, the wetland locations on those four parcels are different from each other, so there's one of them that I think might be a little more troublesome than the other three. What do I know? I'm not a civil engineer, but, you know, that exists. I think what seems to be the larger subdivision, the thing that is going to continue to exist as a group entity, like we have a shared road and possibly an HOA and those sorts of things, where the infrastructure is tied together, then I understand that one is doing and asking for that information up front. If you're creating a neighborhood that, you know, have road infrastructure, then you need to understand what the impact of that's gonna be before you do the subdivision. So those are just my general thoughts about it. If that's helpful.
Yeah, part of the chicken egg situation with this is that when you set up a situation where you don't require the party that is dividing the land to deal with it. And you kick the can down where the person who is building the home on the lot. You're creating a situation where, like in that subdivision that was across the town line last year, you've got some lots that are, you know, easy to build on, no problem. And then you've got other lots where in order to build a lot, you have to put in some kind of a stormwater management system. Because of the water split process. And if, when you shift that onto the buyer of the lot, maybe they go and build the stuff, or maybe the cost of developing that lot becomes so high that nobody else develops it. This is exactly what that they would have to put in pond or kind of culvert or something in order to get access to that lot, which would have been I think a back lot as well. So like that lot, like they're never gonna sell it,
Right.
you know? So that's one problem. The other problem is that if you shift it onto the person with the least amount of money, the person buying the lot, generally speaking, like they're not gonna be able to afford to do it, even if they had to do it. And it's just seeing how many problems that like exist now because of the lack of plan. Taking the responsibility down to the lowest person on the chain of ownership. If the work winds up not happening.
I think in the, I don't drive Jefferson Street that much, but I know 32 and I know where, used to be, Blodgett Senior, I don't even know if he's still around, but he was the rep years ago, but it's right in front of his property
Yeah.
that ice forms. And I don't know when that house was built, but I'm guessing it was a pre-war. I mean, it's been there a long time. And I'm sure that stormwater drainage might not even have been those people doing it about back when that house was built. So some of these things, you know, I mean, it's good we do planning now because going forward, you avoid those things. It doesn't fix the old things. And I hear what you're saying, but I still, I don't know. I mean, the people that were in here with a small subdivision, I honestly don't know what they would show us for a plan without plans to, you know, without the knowledge of what's going to be put there. Where the driveway's gonna go, all that stuff. And I didn't suggest it then because I didn't think it was appropriate, but just hypothetically, I always wondered, because we were worried about how many road cuts, even though the state approved it, that if they made 2 road cuts on the 2 borders and then made like a Y onto the properties, that would, you know, that might affect everything in a positive way. But it's not my place to put that out for them to get it approved or not approved. I didn't think, so I didn't say that, but again, you know, all of those kinds of decisions matter, and if they wind up just selling the property, you know, I hear what you're saying, but I just, you know, I just don't know what you do until you know what you're gonna do.
Well, that was part of the conversation that we had with the engineer. couple weeks ago.
Right.
And they didn't know what to do either. And the way that we left it with them was do it based on the development of the plan to do. And as in the meeting, they told us that they are planning to do the driveway cuts, put in culverts, and at least put in a driveway into each lot so that people can pull off the road and look at the lot and
Right.
say goodbye. And that was the way that we had left it with them, was, you know, to reflect that, do your calculations based on the existing conditions. And the way that we got there was by saying, this is no different than if you're gonna develop a 30 lot subdivision with a private road in Petro Town. You're also not going to consider the houses that are on that, in that subdivision, because
Right,
why would you? They don't exist yet, you don't know what's going to be built, and so. The changes that are planned to be made to the lots, that is the finished condition that ought to be treated with this.
so is there a threshold or a level where hypothetically, like you know, if you're gonna put in a septic system, you have some guy come out and do a design and a perk test, that's a standard practice to have done before you buy a property and make sure you can build on it. So that has an expense, but it's not a particularly onerous expense. Is there some kind of equivalent where the civil engineer can walk on a property without spending hours on intricate design to at least identify in the hypothetical, here's 4 lots in the subdivision. These 3 lots are not gonna present a foreseeable issue unless you do something crazy architecturally, and that still has to go through the code officer and the permits. But this lot, we already know is problematic, because it was there a way to at least do that level of analysis, and then on a problematic lot, that would require the stormwater.
This is exactly what I just described.
Right,
So the process of doing this is you do a calculation based on the tributary area, which is the area that will flow water into the site that you are considering. And so for this particular lot, there's a large tributary area because there's a lot of land area that slopes downward towards it. So you figure out what the tributary area is. Go to pieces there, I want to say my other service. For the volume of water that hits the ground in a 210 to a 25-year storm. And then you do a calculation. You don't even have to set up that site. You can do this all based on GIS and document providing information. And you do the calculations and you figure out where the water is going to flow. And it will show you that all of this water is flowing through one lot out of the 4 lots, in your example. And
Right.
it would raise the problem for us in a way that we can't identify when we're looking at a survey of just these 4 lots.
so now that we're describing it this way, two thoughts. One is worst case scenario in my hypothetical is that, you know, maybe instead of 4 lots, you've only got 3 lots, because if you make 1 lot bigger, that includes this problematic area, blah, blah, blah. And then the other thing, because this is like the most clarifying conversation for me on this topic that we've had over all these weeks and months. Because when you say stormwater drainage plan, I think of the hundreds of thousands of dollars that we paid Horizons Engineering to tell us all these crazy designs, where the retention ponds are gonna go. I called it the swimming pool, the Caterpillar, which was this big giant thing underground.
But
That
all
was-
of that came about from doing this calculation.
But when you say stormwater drainage plan, that was the level of detail I was envisioning, and that's what I don't understand how somebody can do without knowing what they wanna do. So if you.
Oh, it doesn't work that way.
Well,
You've got,
right.
you've got it backwards. Like, it starts with doing this conversation,
No,
with
so-
doing this calculation, and then you figure out what the requirements are, and then you come up with the mitigation.
Right, so my suggestion in all that is to have some clarifying language on the front end about when you say stormwater drainage plan, you're actually talking about an analysis not really a plan that's got the drafting.
No,
Just-
the plan is the outcome of doing the calculation. And if the calculation shows that there are no problematic stormwater flows across the property, well done.
Right,
Put in
but,
a culvert on your driveway and that's it.
but what I'm saying is if there's a definition to what you mean by stormwater drainage plan that describes that, then I never would have personally gone
Oh, yeah, yeah.
gone down the deep end, because when you say stormwater drainage, I mean, I'm talking
Sure.
about sheets and sheets of, plans.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
Mark,
The biggest thing that I see when dealing with this, I deal with the individual lot, so I don't deal with the subdivision that you guys do. The biggest issue that I can point out that some of the board's own contention is, you start getting a road that goes down and then houses and driveways off that. They're creating something and then they need to show potentially how that is going to impact flow of water. When he's talking subdivisions, I think he's talking about something a little bit different than individual house lot on a main road.
well,
Because we deal with the stormwater issues along the road now. Because they have to put in culverts, we do inspections, the public works director goes out and inspects everything for the town of Wallasville. The state goes out and does an inspection
Right.
for everything in the state. They require that, drainage be put in or
but
whatever.
all of what you're talking about gets to the building permit level. What Brendan's talking about is that preliminary analysis that, is more equivalent to the perk test. It's like, it's doing a triage.
No, and I agree with what he's talking
Yeah,
about. I
The
probably
the
wasn't-
triage thing I get, that makes a lot more sense to me than. I don't know how you can go to the level you described and anything beyond that without having, drawings and engineering and architects or whatever, but what you're talking about, that triage level. And identifying the problematic areas and putting constraints or just rejecting this can't be a lot because you'll never,
I'm using that as an example because it is dramatic and it's easy to understand and it's contemporaneous with all the stuff that we
Right.
do. But the problem with the land use ordinance right now is that the way that the language is structured, any development, which means you stick a shovel in the ground, there's a
Right.
brush fire, the definition of development,
Mhm.
and it's required, they stormwater. If you wanna build a shed on your property, that's big enough to require a permit, then it requires the stormwater management. Plan. Which, I'm arguing for the stormwater management plan, but I think that there is some minimum threshold of development size that we have to get to before that should be required.
right.
And in, the practical terms, code enforcement officers, this town and other towns are not required. Thinking. And I can understand why, I can understand why people find it onerous. I don't think that if you were going to buy $100,000 lot, drop it up into a bunch of other lots and you sell it, that, you're necessarily owed assets. Maybe modify this such a way that, we craft that dividing line between them and the.
Well, requiring a preliminary analysis of whatever label you wanna put on it. So somebody who actually knows what they're looking at. Can make that analysis and tell you that you do or don't have problematic areas with the way the new property lines are being drawn. I mean, that should not take a tremendous amount of time or cost a tremendous amount of money. I mean,
No, it's a few $1,000s, and that makes good money.
Well,
That's not
well,
what we're having this at.
yeah, but again, when you said what you said, I mean, just calling it stormwater drainage. I was envisioning something much more complex, and I'm sure, it's just not clearly stated. By having this conversation, now we really understand what each of us is talking about.
Yeah. It's confusing in part because the way that the requirement is phrased, with the should be looking for it, Oh, okay. It's, I forget where it is in the ordinance, but basically they give you three different methodologies for doing the analysis.
Right.
Yeah, and like, they're all gonna basically. They're all basically, not new science. It's,
Right.
you know, 50, 60-year-old stuff, that we're talking about. Yeah, well, it's meantime already, don't think we're gonna solve this today, but let's talk
No.
about it more next
Yeah,
time.
but it's definitely, yeah, it's a good topic.
Let's move into, Amy's, suggestions here.
Thank you for waiting 2 hours.
Well, gosh, you want me to bring the donuts closer for you guys?
Do you want to introduce this at all and kind of explain where this came from?
Yeah, sure, yeah, so. Kind of like what Lake did, with the data center. Looking at other ordinances, yep, and kind of using some of that as. Examples of how to maybe, just be more comprehensive for ours as well. And then there are also some reference to the state of Maine's template, so some things that, the suggestion would be to include them as well. And I have, the copy of the one that is mostly referred to is the Flower Hill, New York ordinance, so if anybody wants to look at the whole thing. But the point is, or how this is organized is, basically in the order of what I was using for the town's ordinance on the wireless part. So trying to kind of just match it. But the first two weren't specific to the wireless telecommunication part, so they don't have a 10.28 point something to go with it. So from the state of Maine, template, it does have the two indications there for A and B and one, ensuring that and protecting that, and then the examples listed in the bullet format, were how the Flower Hill ordinance dealt with that. The second and third bullet are, I think, important for protecting, the town's local authority. Or maybe obviously different ways of wording it, but that at least gives an example. How do you want to do this? Do you want me to just mark through it or stop with each one?
No, go right ahead.
Okay, so then the second one, definitions, again, I don't have, or I didn't look at what we could talk about as far as the holistic definition, so I don't know if wireless stuff is already included in the bigger one. But including, I think, wherever it is, the designated scenic resource, which is a state of Maine recommendation, unreasonable adverse impact, which is a state of Maine recommendation, defining what a gap in service is, and that comes from a resource that the attorney for Arizona, Arizona put together on cell tower law, and also we did one for researchers who sort of defining those two things, because I feel like that's a big part of why this conversation even is happening. And then we get into the 10-point stuff. So with the planning board review of application, including the environmental assessment and the National Environmental Protection Act and National Historic Preservation Act, that's also in the state of Maine template. B is designating a separation distance between proposed facilities, whether or not that's something to consider.
Are you thinking that this is a minimum or maximum?
I don't know, it's just an idea, like, should it be defined, so an example being in Woolwich, there are literally two towers that if you drive through one and it's, maybe 3 seconds have gone by, you know, I'm not good at saying what a football field distance is, but when I'm on the road, it's like 1, 2, 3, and
There's
it's just,
another one, yeah.
it's just really like, wow, that's surprising to me. So it made me think, maybe we want to consider that. See on page 2, top of, documentation, based on field data and performed by an independent third-party RF engineer. So that language is going to come up again later as far as the third party, under the electronic emissions part, or electromagnetic emissions part. So these again are examples coming from that Flower Hill ordinance, which I don't know that we have that detail, you know, that may or may not be something that was presented by an engineer at the time of an application, but, it feels like we should be in that, how do you say it? Do first and then whatever, like,
Yeah, she first out this week.
yeah.
You're the
so-
only American. who
A
knows
tough,
that.
a tough analogy, I have a hard time even saying it, but anyways, it's putting, again, the
Carpet in the house.
control into.
Right.
Probably have.
Yeah.
D, that speaks more to the least intrusive piece, and then there's an example of that.
This, the village, what's it called, Village of
Flower
Flowers, Flower Hill?
Yeah.
Is this the town of New York that was brought up by one of your neighbors?
I don't know.
Oh,
This-
okay.
No, this
All
is the first I've heard of it.
When we had the first, I think it was the very first meeting about this, there was, a resident at the meeting who spoke that said
Oh,
that he lived in a village in New York that got a cell tower developer to use a different type of system. They want to put in small towers on light poles.
EAS, distributed antenna system is not available.
Yeah, exactly. Instead of doing one more tower, right? He's ordered neighbor.
Yeah.
It's a strange name. I can't remember.
Scott. yeah, Scott, but so that, this is not his hometown. I forget, he's,
Was he on Long Island, I think?
yeah, he's on Long Island. I think he was referencing his own village, so I don't know if that New York uses that word.
They do.
Okay, all right, well, that was new to me, but no, he's not Long Island.
Okay.
Does that answer your question? Okay. E, I'm not sure, establish a procedure for any disabled person to submit a request for grievance, so. I can think of some ways in which that might, play a part in this. I think it's just something to think about and be mindful of. I'm not sure what the language would be, so.
Well, what you're asking for here is,
Would that not go under this
this
part?
is within the planning board review of application. So we're asking for, the E here is asking for the applicant to establish a procedure.
Okay, good question. Well, no, I don't think it would be the applicant. I think it would be, what does town see as a procedure for a disabled person needed to express anything. On the next section, 10.28.3.6, photo simulation. I think it's very helpful if the foliage has dropped. So if that's something that can be, it makes a big difference, right? Specify the blue intense, I think there's, having gone through one already, that having it over the course of a couple days and different times of day would be prudent. And then as far as the waiver goes, so there was some confusion around this with our own lived experience, but if this can be clarified, why a waiver wasn't an option, and then kind of addressing that, but making it so that a waiver can be provided ahead of time so that property owners have a chance to read it, not just on the spot. But we obviously didn't even have a chance to do that because it bypassed, but so that's that part. I'm sticking number 5 without a 10.8.6 thing because if it can follow the photo simulation as far as further visual impact standards, and these come from the state of Maine, that's right. I'm not quite sure how the numbering system works, but yeah, just really kind of being in the driver's seat there.
Can you explain, the conservation land, item about?
Okay, the number 6?
the Location, yeah.
Yeah, okay. So if we're not keeping the language as it is now, which is the 300 yards, there is a proposed languaging of where it can't go. And my feeling is that conservation land should be in the restricted. On the no list.
Now, are you proposing a setback from conservation, I think land truly is in conservation, they're not gonna develop on it anyway.
Well, later there is I think it's on the, oh, maybe it's later on this page. So under number 9B. Having additional setbacks that, include that, so conservation land, parks, scenic easements, designated wildlife corridors. I would have to do more research to figure out what is out there for recommendations as far as that setback goes, but, I do think that it's a large part of what makes our area special.
Yeah, I think that this is a good idea, and I wish that we had. Or, say, I hope that somebody got a photograph of what the green looks like from the Goose River and Peace Forest Reserve right there. I didn't realize how close the proposed location was to that park. And, I realized this at 11:57 and realized I wasn't gonna be able to walk in there and get the photos of it.
I have a picture from Fintown.
So I need to,
Okay,
yeah,
Yeah, I'd love to see pictures since I wasn't able to do that. I mean, those of you that are available, but maybe if. So you'll forward it to us at some point. So that would be great.
does that answer that question about number 6?
yes,
And Daniel, okay. The liability insurance under number 7, so just feeling like that's, again, kind of prudent with the thoroughness of specifications.
that also,
Number 8 is, just including with the, I think the height section maybe, but the proper, having a proper lightning strike mitigation plan. Number 9 with the setbacks, expanding it, I know that there was already kind of a bump up in permissible setbacks. There is that New Hampshire study, that is recommending a setback of 1,640 feet. I don't have a copy of that, it's like 300 and something pages, but, the specific pages are referenced there. And then again, the setbacks are, in our conservation lands. Number 10, standard conditions of approval, so that first example is the right to retain experts in services, and then the cost being borne by the applicant. That has been an interesting part of, my learning curve, that, there could be a reason not to maybe go the distance that might be the best for, a community if there's a hindrance with regard to cost. So, wanted to include that. And then with number 11, the electronic emissions, it's a really great inclusion in terms of what's been modified already. And I would just, again, specify that that exposure compliance is performed by a third party, not applicant applied, the supplied agency. And also that we make sure it's a cumulative evaluation. And then,
what does that mean? exactly?
so that would mean, it would be I don't know if aggregate is another word or a better word, but if what's being provided is, here's what the report is saying for an art study or something like that, based on the one carrier, that's in the forefront of an application, where three more can be a part of that. Well, then, does that not change?
The same as what they changed it to different all.
All co-located facilities, so we'll probably,
And the other thing about it is, that's really interesting, is that, like, if we're thinking of the map that we were given, that kind of shows the percentage, I guess. The thing that I'm learning about these emissions is that it's not just a steady delivery. There's pulsing that goes on with this kind of technology. And so is that something that, I don't know, it just is one of those things where it's fine if there's an average that has such a a diagram, but if this technology has a pulsing effect, and so it could be less or higher, and are the higher ranges still within the approved? Like, where does it fall if the higher ranges are outside of the approved measure or matrix or whatever the word is? So it's a complicated thing, but it brings to light, I think,
Can you be a little bit specific about that, about, like, it sounds like you're not talking about, like, the peaks and valleys of a waveform. It sounds like you're talking about, like, not testing versus testing the average output of the wireless facility versus the peak output.
so that's a very good point. Yeah, so, and pulse might not be the best where it valleys and peaks is good. Yeah, that's a really good distinction there. I just know from my own lived experience with a meter, that I can do readings off of cell towers. It's not the highest end equipment, but it's very informative. And it's, so if it's giving a range of like, low to extreme, let's say, and if it's mostly in a certain area, but then you can see where these peaks are, that jump that's extraneously higher. If you're passing by in a car, no big deal. But if this is something that's happening 24/7,
Right.
you happen to be living there,
Right.
that's concerning. So I don't know, Brendan, that you're making the suggestion that it has to have not an average, but fall within this, a safety based on even the, I don't know. I'm not gonna put words in your mouth, but you made an interesting point there.
I don't know that much about this.
Okay.
I was mostly just looking for information
Yeah,
for
and it might,
myself, but I understand what exactly.
Yeah. something to further learn. And then allowing for unannounced testing that's done by the town of the applicant themselves. Then other inclusions, maybe to consider one from the state of Maine, the other two authority to inspect and implement locations with protection of the town, and there's probably more language out there, but I didn't throw it in there.
In terms of like the actions of the town and its officers.
Yeah, just protecting, yeah.
Pursuing the actions that you're describing in here. I think that makes sense.
I just have my last little list of questions and stuff that I've learned of just going through this process. And I didn't necessarily see it in the wireless telecommunications section. So it's probably there, but, just wondering, where is information about the public hearing process, the 3-tiered application process, the application preliminary and final, notices, how that gets handled, and, well, the shot clock, I guess, would be specific to wireless, but is that in there?
That is,
I mean,
so
it's an FCC thing.
working backwards, yes. The
Okay.
150-day timer is an FCC thing.
Okay.
I thought it was 90.
Wonderful.
But I'm sure it's 150, at least that's what the lawyer said. And the notices, I think it's not in 10.28. That's what I thought, yeah. Yeah, and then the 3-stage hearing process, that is outlined.
Okay,
I got that right from the plan, that's all right. Yeah.
okay.
You've been looking at it too much.
Was there a player in the chair?
Remember it. Moments ago.
Okay,
Minutes later.
here we go, okay.
So I hope you're proud that my 15-page thing that I passed off last month is now down to 3.5, not even 3.5.
Yeah.
I think that these are all, well, some of them are vague and they would need to get fined a little bit. I think that these are all reasonable requests. and they're providing for a thorough level of oversight by the town for this type of development. I think we learned some things so far in the process that have shown, that more oversight in one business than I don't really have a lot of price effective any of these benefits. Pretty good. I do want to do some research into like the reference text that you cited here. And I think that some of that would help to take some of these EG bullet points. Maybe with policy and board on this stuff.
Yeah, I also agree. I appreciate that. This is much more specific and well thought out of the review process and to monitor. The only big concern that I immediately see is when I was looking up language around FCC court cases and the regulations, they very often talk about undue costs, undue financial restrictions. I do wonder if something like allowance of random unannounced testing performed by the town at the applicant's expense, that will have, I'd say, has a significant chance of running afoul of those. Maybe it's something that only gets sorted out in court. I don't know. It did trigger me as a worry around those undue financial restrictions.
The action itself is a good idea, but as far as like the testing, random testing, but it might not be that it's at the applicant's.
Yeah,
Okay.
trying to make it at the applicant's expense might run us afoul of the FCC. Maybe it won't, I don't know, but
I think I thought the same thing, but I think that there's a time factor to this as well, like. They can't complain to us that some future request might be on us, they have to make a complaint when you make the request. So, like, it's their role to get this application approved, it's not their role to, judge our ordinance on every potential item. So while yes, I think that the court would probably find that elective testing requested by the town to be paid for at the applicant's expense was actually undue hardship. I think that that's something that they're committed to complain about it. Something that they would plan to get. Yeah, I don't think that language would somehow obliterate all of the requirements in the ordinance.
Well, and I suppose part of it is how you review something like that. Are you requesting these inspections to harass because you're doing it every few weeks? Or
Right.
is it like, there've been some complaints about and they want to do some fact finding?
Yeah, I mean, I think it depends on what the hardship is, like if it's
Right.
being used in a punitive manner to bleed money out of an applicant.
Right.
Just for no reason, if you've got, all of a sudden a hot spot of brain cancer amongst all of the surrounding properties, I don't think this is an undue hardship situation.
Correct. Right, exactly. I don't know how you might put some, or if you need to put some clarifying language on the front end around that, but.
I mean, Brendan makes a good point of let them prove that it's not.
Right, exactly.
I would just say, with some like with at once. Last time we had to keep it to, within 300 yards off the one, so that language is remaining.
Yeah.
So, I'm just,
I like that.
you have that, the final, right, around and around and around, and read the final vote is to keep it as within 300.
With the idea that if we start to see, which we know, with technology, increased traffic for these towers beyond one every 5 years kind of thing, that we may want to revisit that as well. Here's my recollection.
So in speaking of 300 yard language, is that what?
I thought it was 3 2. Yeah.
Returning, include people, yeah. I don't feel particularly strongly about that one or the other, just because they are, this self-powered requesting a waiver, and it's often.
Yeah, and my recollection is we left it, that at least for the short term, we were happy with having them complete the waiver process. Because,
Well, this isn't even gonna apply to this applicant.
and
They're
it's,
gonna apply.
and it's actually very, not waiver, but,
So we haven't gotten an application yet, so.
oh, waiver. Okay,
So the planning board, then if it's,
gotcha,
if it's the appeals board, then I'm the
gotcha.
without, if it's to you, it's that you need to waive this particular,
Gotcha.
around. It took me a minute, that long.
Yeah, no, I'm good.
only
I'm
other-
impressed you know that.
The only other things, Sally had to jump off. So the only thing that she was still wanting to clarify, does the tower site fall, does a tower site fall under commercial or industrial standards? If they're- or commercial? Will planning board require proof from the equipment manufacturer that the generator operates within the required levels?
Yeah, so they're gonna have to show a sound output. And the generator manufacturer, they're used to this, the concept of everything else, and they will size and design size it for the generator. That will create the sound output on this. But this is something new. So Caterpillar or the Kohler, they choose to provide the generator. Yeah. Okay. So 12:30, I would like to wrap this up, but I think we need to figure out how to make some money. Because you're not gonna be here.
I mean, it will be recorded, like it's in here, it will be recorded, so I will be able to with notes and make any changes
Okay.
on the 13th.
But we have to vote on the.
Well, it's the 12th, your meeting is the 12th, I will be able to work on it.
I see, okay.
But you do have to vote to going to the
Yeah.
select board for the thing.
Right, are you available to draft language between now and then? That, so we can discuss that again.
Yeah,
Um,
I will be working remotely next week, but I am working next week,
okay,
Are there any,
and my evening there.
so wrapping up this project is on that agenda front and center.
That is the only thing on the agenda.
Okay, that was my question.
Yeah, we didn't run any applications.
Okay, so just to
And
get
it was
this all
noticed, it
tied up
was-
and above.
Noticed as such that it would be when you saw it,
Gotcha.
And which date is that?
the 12th, next day. Standard time.
Okay, yep.
Just out of curiosity, when we vote to approve these changes or not, or, we vote for the package to go to the next step. Is it done as like, oh, we approve all the changes, or do we go through every single change of indent, or how?
we're going to have to do it very much like we do approval and applications. So, there have to be a motion to accept, for example, the changes that they've brought today with the changes we're gonna have to detail that they're changing.
Almost like cluster by cluster, maybe?
Yeah. And then, we'll have one vote to accept that with the changes that we want to make to it. And we can continue to, we'll have to keep going through it until all three of us agree on a set of changes that we're going to put forward. At that point, the entire package goes to the select board and then we just go out one block. Because unless I think that we have the,
Craft the warrant article, it goes to the select board for approval, or does the select board craft the warrant article?
The warrant article itself is just, as I recall, it just says, do you want to vote for the changes to the land use ordinance proposed by the planning board? And if you want to know what those changes are,
Yeah.
you have to research it ahead of time because they can buy it to you. Yeah, so, yeah, which is no small part, I think, of why I would do it. You know, because it's gone to the select board. The select board has given it their blessing, it goes on to the ballot. You know, nobody knows what's in there, so we just go for it. And, you know, it will get, basically, whatever we suggest. Right.
We can do counter reports for them, they do it. Article by article.
Yes.
It's good to know that we do it as one.
That hasn't been how we do it. If there is something that you think is maybe controversial, or maybe the three of us can come to an agreement, maybe we can take out that thing that we don't agree on and set it up as a separate unit, separate item and let the town vote on it. Like, I think that structure is something that we can choose to do as a thing. The select board to agree.
I mean, basically, most of this stuff is clarifying language. And the accessory. Innovative.
Okay, so with all that being said, I guess, yeah, there's nothing for us to vote on, that we have to vote on today, right? I don't think we have anything to do it. Yeah, so I guess for the next meeting, let's all do our homework, and read up on this stuff so we can all have a focused conversation on it. And I'm sure that we're forgetting some things that we talked about in the past, so I'll find my notes. But I can pick it up, there are people that want to prepare themselves for it. So maybe have an agenda and you can prepare. We've been affected this time too, but we're out of time to kick the can down the road on it.
Yeah.
No, it's all good.
We have to vote on it on
There's
Thursday.
that, right.
It's in capable hands, enjoy, guys. Okay.
Feel free to take some